Okay, so let's look at, this is going to be number 30 on page 453. Let me make sure I haven't done it yet. Oh, I did do it.
No, but please, by all means, go ahead.
Is there any way to make that a little brighter? Or is that as
Like
bright
this
as it
side
gets?
of
I
it
think
looks.
that bulb, I think that bulb is getting.
No,
to be on the last leg.
it's this right here. It's moving this,
There we go.
Oh,
but
there-
moving that just, well, I guess, okay, it looks, that's fine on here.
It does look a lot more readable now.
Well, but I've got to try and get this to record as well without messing up. Okay, so let's look at 31. This is on page 453. So 31, x squared, this is x cubed plus 7x squared divided by x squared plus 5x minus 14. All right, so you want to simplify this rational expression. So a rational expression, remember, is a polynomial divided by a polynomial. And that's what this is, a polynomial divided by a polynomial, so it's a rational expression. To simplify a rational expression, the first thing you do is factor the numerator and the denominator. How can I factor the numerator?
X squared,
So factor out the x squared, so GCF times
X plus 7.
x plus 7. Okay, now the denominator is a trinomial. So you get the GCF is 1, so you can go directly to two binomials. Now remember we talked about, see how this factor appears in x plus 7? The idea is to chances are something's going to reduce. You'll be able to cancel something out. So these are going to be two binomials. Then the only binomial I see that's in the numerator is this x plus 7. So there's a good chance that there's going to be an x plus 7 in the denominator.
Which is cool.
So let's factor the denominator now. So xx, what are the factors of 14 you want to try?
7 and 2.
7 and 2. And then remember the last sign's negative. So that means these signs are going to be different. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative.
since
Well,
you got an X plus 7.
since I have an x plus 7, then probably that's going to be the one that's positive. What now?
Oh, okay, and it needs to be a plus.
Okay. And so this would be the what? The negative?
Negative.
But check your work. What's the outer?
2X.
Negative 2x. What's the inner?
7x.
When I add them up, do I get the positive?
Yeah.
Yes. So, okay, so that's the first step. First step is to factor the numerator, factor the denominator. The next step is to reduce your common factors. Cancel out your common factors. Okay, so let's start with the numerator. The first factor I see is an x. Does x occur as a factor anywhere in the denominator?
Yeah,
No, it
but
doesn't.
X squared.
Factors are separated by multiplication symbols. So x squared times x plus 7. So you got to know what your factors are. So let's talk about factors. Some of you are having issues with knowing what a factor is. Factors are separated by multiplication symbol. So when I read this as x times x plus 7, right? So your factors are x, and it occurs how many times x?
Twice.
Twice. The other factor is x plus 7.
And that automatically can be counted.
Okay? Down here, what are your factors? X plus 7 is a factor. What's the other factor? X minus 2. Those are your factors. So let's go back to the numerator. My first factor is an x. Does x occur as a factor anywhere down there?
No.
No. My next factor is an x plus 7. Does x plus 7 occur as a factor down there?
Yes.
Yes. How many factors of x plus 7 do you see up here?
1.
How many do you see down there?
1.
So you just reduce them like this. So they divide out, you put ones in their place. Make sure you understand why there's ones in their place. Let's remember about this. What's 3 divided by 3?
1.
1. Remember, you reduce. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is 1. You get 1, right?
Mhm.
So what's x plus 7 divided by x plus 7?
1.
1. So that's why we put 1s there. So when you cross them out, make sure you put a factor of 1 that's left. So the factor of 1's the only thing left. You see that the light is messing this up now. I'm going to try and move it to where it's not messing it up.
Would it help maybe to put the webcam in a different location?
No, it has to be straight down.
Oh, it's, okay, it's,
It has to be straight down.
yeah, well, he's
All right.
filming it off of the board
Okay.
instead of off of the screen.
Right. Okay, so is there any other factors that I can cancel out?
No.
No. All right. So then your final answer would be a fraction. What's x squared times 1?
X squared,
Squared.
What's 1 times x minus 2?
X minus 2.
So this is your answer. That's your answer. 33. All right, 33. You have 2x squared minus 8 divided by 4x minus 8. All right, so remember the first thing you're going to do is factor the numerator and then factor the denominator. And you got to know how to do that because in the next section you're going to start multiplying these things, these rational expressions. See how you have one rational expression and the next you're going to have two rational expressions to deal with. All right, so what are you going to do to the numerator?
2. Factor
GCF is 2. Y'all guys, at this point, you need to know how to factor. We've gone beyond chapter 6 now. So factor out of 2. 2 times what?
X squared minus 4.
4.
All right, in the denominator, what can I do?
4.
4, yeah.
Times.
X.
X minus 2.
All right, now have I factored the numerator completely? No. So let's factor it further. So it'll be 2 times what? That's the
X.
difference of
2 squared.
2 squares. So x,
X plus X minus 2.
yeah, x plus 2, x minus 2. This is not,
Not working.
no, I know moving this is going to change this. So x minus 2, x plus 2 over 4 times x minus 2, right? Okay, so I factor completely. First thing you got to do is factor completely. All right, now what's the first factor listed in the numerator?
2.
2. Will it reduce with any factors that's in the denominator? The 4. So 2 into 2 is
1.
1. 2 into 4 is
2.
2. What's the next factor that you see?
X minus 2.
Does x minus 2 occur as a factor down there?
Yes.
Yes. So in fact, there's just one of each, right?
Mhm.
So when you cross them out, you put factors of 1s in their place. What's the next factor that you see?
X plus 2.
Does x plus 2 occur anywhere down there?
No.
No. All right, so therefore I'm done. I just write my answer. What's 1 times 1 times x plus 2?
X plus 2.
What's 2
2.
times 1?
2.
2. All right, now can I cancel all these 2's right here?
No.
No, you can only reduce factors. The 2's not a factor because of this addition symbol. Factors are separated by what symbol?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. That's not multiplication. So this is your answer. All right, 40. Let's look at 34. All right, so 34, you have this. 34. Okay, so you have 5x squared minus 500 divided by 35x plus 350. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, GCF would be
5.
5.
Times,
X squared minus 100.
divided by,
7x.
Is that a 35?
that's 35.
Oh. Uh,
What's the GCF?
35
35.
is the GCF, so x plus 10.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What can I do to the numerator?
Oh, you got that.
Factored out.
Difference of 2 squares.
So it'll be X plus 10 minus 10.
All right, so the first factor you see is a 5. Will 5 reduce anything down there?
35.
35. 5 and 5 is 1. 5 and 35 is 7. Next one's x minus 10. Do I see an x minus 10 down there?
No.
No.
Next one's x plus 10. I do see one.
Yes.
So I reduce those. Put ones in their place when you cross them out.
Ones.
So 1 times x minus 10 times 1 is
X minus 10 over 7.
over 7. All right, 36. Okay, you have 49 minus y squared. That's a y. Divided by y minus 7. All right. What are you going to do with the numerator? Difference of
Well,
two
that's
squares.
two squares.
And do 7.
Nope. No, leave it like that.
Can't because of being a
Because it's a
subtraction.
negative. Yeah, if you put it in order, you're going to have negative y squared plus 49. So since y squared is negative, leave it as it is. So how do you factor this? 7 minus,
7 minus
Y
times 7 plus y.
and the denominator is,
Y minus 7.
Y minus
and
7.
Cancel out.
okay, so I factored the numerator, factored the denominator. Now, my first factor is a 7 minus y. Do you see a 7 minus y in the denominator?
Yes.
No, you don't.
In the denominator.
Oh.
That's a y minus 7.
Okay.
And those are not the same.
Yeah.
No, they're not the same, because that's a positive 7, that's a negative 7. That's a negative y, that's a positive y.
We touched on that last summer.
Yeah, but what do you remember about 7 minus y and y minus 7?
That
Starts with an O.
Opposing, opposites.
Opposites. There.
I figured if I go through enough O words.
Yeah. And there's not that many you can think of.
hey, he's trying to get it out on the quick, all right? He gets
All right,
back to
they're
that.
opposites. So remember when I divide opposites, 8 divided by negative 8, what is that equal to?
A negative.
Negative 1. When I divide negative 7 divided by 7, what is that equal to? Negative 1. So when I cross them out, the factor that's left is a negative 1. So you see, these are opposites. So you're supposed to recognize that. 7 minus y and y minus 7 are opposites. So when I cross them out, one's going to be a, look at them do this again, 8 divided by negative 8. 8, they're both divisible by 8, right? So 8 divided by 8 is 1. Negative 8 divided by 8 is negative 1. So when I reduce them, one's going to be a positive 1, the other's going to be a negative 1. We tend to make it doesn't always, but we tend to make the top factor that you cross out the negative 1, and the bottom factor the positive 1. So this will be negative 1, there's going to be a positive 1. The next factor you see is 7 plus y. Is there a 7 plus y down there? No. So therefore, the answer is, well, let me go back. So you see it's negative 1 times this, right? So in your mind, you have negative 1 times 7 plus y, correct? Divided by what? 1. Okay, but then let's get rid of the parentheses. Distribute. And then we're going to have our answer. What's negative 1 times 7?
Negative 7.
Negative 1 times y.
Negative y.
Over 1, which is just what? Anything divided by 1 is itself. So this is the answer you would write. Negative 7 minus y. Or if you want to put in descending order this time, you can. It would be negative y minus 7. All right, so you got to remember the opposites now. So on that worksheet, there are some that are opposites. So remember, when you cross out the factors that are opposites, one's going to be a positive 1, the other's going to be a negative 1. So when you cross these out, those were exactly the same. So both factors, what do I put in its place? Ones. I put ones in their place. Here, these are opposites. So one's going to be a negative 1, the other's going to be a positive 1. And just like it was with just some numbers that we talked about. All right. 38. All right, 38, you have 24y squared minus 8y cubed divided by 15y minus 5y squared.
Well, the first one, yeah, GCF would be,
8y squared.
Okay. Times?
4.
Not 4.
4y.
3.
3y. No, it's just 3, right? 3 minus what?
Y.
Y. The denominator, what can I do?
Take out the 5 y.
5y.
5y.
And you left with?
3 minus
Minus y.
y.
oh, look what
Okay.
we got up top.
All right. Now, the first factor, now remember, factors are separated by product. So technically, 8 is a factor. This y is a factor and occurs how many times?
Twice.
Twice. And my next factor is 3 minus y. So let's start with the 8. Does 8 reduce with anything down there?
No.
No. Let's talk about the y. Well, does y occur as a factor anywhere down there?
Yes.
Yes. All right. But you got to remember, how many factors of y do you see up here?
2.
There are 2. So in your mind, you're saying y squared divided by what?
Y.
Y.
So one of them cancels.
Yeah.
out.
So if you want to think about it, you can also think about it this way. The y squared is really y times y, right?
Mhm.
Over what?
Why?
Y. And then you can reduce one of these like this.
Just left what leaves a y.
Yeah. And then 1 times y is
Why?
y over 1, which is just what?
Why?
Y. Okay? So basically you're saying this. You're saying y into y is 1. There are how many right here?
2.
2. So when I cross one of them out, I'm left with 1. Just like that. Okay?
Then you have the 3 minus.
All right. And then 3 minus y, those are exactly the same. So when I cross those out, what open in their places? 1.
So you
All right. So therefore, what's the numerator?
have 8y.
Over what?
5.
Okay. So don't forget what we just talked about. All right, 42. So in 42, you have x cubed plus 64 divided by x plus 4. How do you factor the numerator?
It's one of the formulas that I can't remember.
What is the numerator? It's the sum
Sum of
to
2
cubes.
cubes.
Okay, so let's kind of figure out what that is. So 64 is 4 cubed, right?
Mhm.
So this is your first, this is your last. So when you factor sum of 2 cubes, is that binomial f plus L times the first squared minus the product of the first and the last, and then the last squared, right? So what's going to be the binomial in the numerator? X plus 4 times, all right, when I square, I got to square x, and what do I get?
X squared.
Square.
Minus the product of f and L, 4x, plus 4 squared, 16, right? All divided by
X
x plus 4. All right, so a factor. I couldn't factor the denominator, so I just rewrote it. Now let's reduce. What can I reduce?
X 4. X plus 4.
So what's going to be the answer?
X squared minus
4x.
4x plus 16.
That is the answer. All right, 44. 44, you have 3 minus x divided by x cubed minus 27. All right, so 3 minus x is linear.
You can't do that.
You can't do anything with it. The denominator is the difference of
Difference of 3 cubes.
2
Two
cubes.
Cube, okay. Well, I'm just right.
All right, so in this case, it'll be x minus 3 times
First and the last.
x squared plus the product,
So
3x. plus the last squared, so that's going to be 3 squared, which is
9.
9. So that's the denominator. So I have 3 minus x divided by x minus 3 times x squared plus 3x plus 9. Just like this. All right. My first factor, or the only factor that's in the numerator, is 3 minus x. Do you see a 3 minus x in the denominator?
No, but you have the opposite.
But you see it's opposite. So I can cross this out like this. Put this factor in now what?
A negative.
Negative 1.
Negative 1. This one a
Positive.
positive 1. And so the answer then is going to be
Negative 1.
negative 1 divided by,
X squared plus 3x plus 9.
okay? Now another way you can write this, just to remind you, if I have negative 2 divided by 3 like this, negative 2 divided by 3, that's the same thing as saying 2 divided by negative 3. It's also the same thing as saying negative 2/3, where you can put the negative out in front. So when I put the negative out in front, sometimes you'll see, if you look at the answer in the back of the book, sometimes you may see this, negative and then 1 divided by the denominator. So they'll put the negative in front of the fraction. But this and this are the same thing.
That's how my math lab, anytime we've had a fraction with a negative in it, it's always been like out front.
Okay. But if you put this one in my math lab, it'll still give you credit for it. Negative 1 divided. All right, so that's 44. 46. All right, 46, you have 2xy. The numerator is going to be 2xy plus 2x minus 3y minus 3. The denominator is going to be 2xy plus 4x minus 3y minus 6.
Okay, you can get rid of a lot of that already.
What do you mean?
Well, you got your 2xy's, both of those divided by.
You can only reduce factors. 2xy is not a factor because it's that addition symbol. Okay? So I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm hoping y'all not going to do this. Cross these out, put ones in their
That's
places.
exactly what I wanted to do.
No, you can't do that. It's kind of like if you had, let's say, 4 plus 6 divided by 4 plus 2, let's say.
Yeah.
Well, 4 plus 6 is what?
10.
10. 4 plus 2 is 6, which is 5/3, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you do what you just did,
Yeah.
you do this,
6
and do
half,
this.
which is 3.
that's going to be 4 over 2, which is 2. That's not the same thing. So you can't do that. You can only reduce factors. 2xy is not a factor because of that addition symbol. It's got to be 2xy times 2x times 3y times 3.
So you can't.
Okay? This has to be 2xy times 4x times 3y times 6.
Roger.
Okay? So how would you factor the numerator?
You do the grouping.
The grouping. So let me go ahead and do the work down here. All right, group the first two, group the last two. What can I factor from the first two? First group. 2x times what?
Y.
Plus 1. What can I factor out of the second group?
3.
Negative 3. And when you factor negative 3, what's left?
Y plus 1.
Y plus 1. So therefore, you're going to get y plus 1 times
2 minus 3.
2x minus 3.
Oh, yeah.
So that can be your numerator. So you put that in the numerator's place. So y plus 1 times 2x minus 3. All right, right, now let's do the denominator. So the denominator, you have
Pull it down just a little bit.
the denominator, you have 2xy plus 4x minus 3y minus 6.
Minus 6.
So again, grouping, you have 4 terms. So group the first 2, group the last 2.
On the first one, you can factor out 2x,
2x times.
y plus 2,
Second group
-3
times.
times y plus 2,
Okay, then you can take out a y plus 2.
and then a 2x minus 3.
2x minus 3. So that's going to be the denominator. So y plus 2 times 2x minus 3. All right, so the first thing you did was factor. So I factor the numerator and I factor the denominator.
So you can
Now let's reduce common factors. What can I reduce?
2x minus 3 goes away.
Okay.
Becomes 1 on each side.
All right, well, the factors that are left are 1s. Okay, so y plus 1 times 1 is?
Y plus 1 over y plus 2.
Y'all agree? That's the answer. So you have to factor first. So you have to use factor by grouping in this case.
Is that 2x minus 3 up top right there? Yes, sir. That one?
Yes.
It's 3?
Y plus 2 times 6 minus 3. All right, so that's 46. All right, 48. All right, 48. All right, so in 48 you have 2x squared minus x minus 3 divided by 2x cubed minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 3. All right, how do you factor the numerator?
You factor out the -1 from the x.
Well,
Um,
that's a trinomial. How do you factor that numerator? The two binomials.
Okay, so x,
2x and x.
2x and x.
Okay, the only possibility for 3 is 3 and 1. We got to figure out which parentheses to put that in. Which one do you think? The first? The first one. The last sign's negative. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative.
It's got to equal -1.
So it's going to be negative.
The 3.
Okay? All right, now let's check it though. You need to get that negative x. What's the outer?
2x,
What's the inner?
negative 3x,
When I add them up, I do get that
negative x.
negative x. All right, let's deal with the denominator. How do I deal with the denominator?
Grouping.
Okay? What can I factor out the first group?
X squared,
X squared times
X plus 3,
not plus 3
minus 3.
minus 3. What can I factor out the second group? What can I do?
Oh,
First two.
yeah, what happened to the 2 in front of the x on the first set?
Oh, okay.
That was kind of what was throwing me off. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
something missing.
I knew something was wrong, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't
Alright.
figure out what it was.
All right, so x squared times 2x minus 3, right?
Mhm.
Okay, what can I factor out the second group?
1,
Positive 1. And what's left?
2x minus
2x
3.
minus 3. Notice these are the same. So you're going to get 2x minus 3
Minus 3
times-
and just x squared plus
plus 1.
1.
Can I factor x squared plus 1?
Yeah, it's the x plus 1, x minus 1.
Can I factor x squared plus 1?
No.
No, it's a sum of two squares. You can't factor the sum of two squares. What you said would have been x squared minus 1. That's x squared plus 1. Okay? Sum of two squares, so you can't not factor that. That's the sum of two squares. So then this becomes 2x minus 3 times x squared plus 1. All right, now reduce. These cross out, put 1 in their place.
Well, then you have
One.
just, you know, X
And
plus-
so you have x plus 1 divided by what?
X plus one.
X squared plus
X squared plus 1.
You cancel that one.
So x plus 1 divided by x squared plus 1. Can I do anything else?
Yeah, can't you, cancel out and then.
Cancel out what? You just said cancel out. What are you canceling out?
Well, the x plus one up top would be 1, and then you would have the other x left at the bottom. Can't you do that?
No, why would you do that? You can only factor out factors. So you got to start thinking of factors, okay?
Yeah, we keep.
You got to think about factors. What is the factor that's in the numerator? X plus 1. Do you see an x plus 1 in the denominator?
No.
No, you see a what in the denominator?
X squared.
X squared plus 1. Those are not the same thing. So you can't do anything else. You're done. You're going to start thinking of those in terms of what's the factor that's in the numerator? Do I see it in the denominator? It's got to look exactly like that.
What threw me off was a little while ago, one of them, you had an x and an x squared, and you were able to remove one of them.
What is because he's talking about this one. Because remember, when we did this, we talked about factors. X is not a factor.
Yeah, there's no multiplication sign.
Okay?
That's the part.
So we were talking about factors. That's why you had that x squared divided by x. Those were factors. This x is not a factor. X plus 1 is a factor. So it was actually the y squared and y. So you were looking at this one. Those are factors. 8's a factor. Y is a factor that occurs 2 times. 3 minus y is a factor. So that y, we're reducing this factor of y as well. You got to think of these in terms of what are your factors when you do the reducing. Because that goes back to what he did earlier, where he wanted to, I forgot where it was, where he said that 2xy, remember that 2xy that he wanted to cancel out?
Yeah, one or cancel on it. Oh, just like this. Oh, there it is. It's up there. That one.
Oh yeah, right here. You want to cancel these out and then probably the 3 y's as well.
Yeah. That 2x and the 4x make it a half.
Make this problem real
Yeah.
simple.
Math is like freaking OxyClean. You think you're done, but wait, there's more. That's what math is. Shenanigans.
Number 50. You have 8x cubed minus 27 divided by 4x squared plus 6x plus 9.
Top one is that, 3, whatever the thing is.
Okay, you got to know the terminology, David. Okay? So, seriously, if one of your issues is a factor, you better know that terminology. All right, so the terminology here is difference of
Difference of 2 cubes.
2 cubes, difference of 2 cubes. All right, so the first parentheses, what would you put?
AX.
2x. Second parentheses, 3, right? Okay, so this is the F, this is your L. All right, so when I factor the numerator, what's going to be the binomial?
The,
F minus L. What's F? 2x minus 3. Okay, now the trinomial.
Question,
Yes?
when you put the ones in the parentheses, how did you go from an 8x to 2x on the
He-
first one?
he used
What
the
times
formula.
itself 3 times is 8x cubed.
Oh,
So 2x times 2x times 2x is 8x cubed. What times itself 3 times is 27. 3 times 3 times 3. All right, so the parentheses, the first term, I'm going to square the f. So what's 2x times 2x?
4x squared.
Okay, plus the product of these, so 2x times 3 is 6x, plus, and then I'm going to, the last term is the L squared, so that's where I squared 3,
9.
9. All right. Now the denominator, look, don't try doing anything with the denominator, because that denominator is what you see up here, right?
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So just rewrite it. In fact, you couldn't even factor the denominator. The denominator you cannot factor. So don't even try doing the two binomials here because nothing works. Nothing works. All right, now let's talk about factors. My first factor I see is a 2x minus 3. Is there a 2x minus 3 occurring down there? No. What is the next factor that you see? That trinomial. That is a factor. Does it occur anywhere in the denominator?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank sweet baby Jesus, because that just made that a lot easier.
And so what's the answer?
2x minus 3.
That's the answer. Okay. All right. Now, you remember on test 2, you had something like this. And you want to find f of negative 3. What did y'all do?
You plug
Substituted the
you
negative
substitute
3.
Yeah, wherever you saw the variable x, you plugged in negative 3, right? And some of you still managed to mess that up.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that boost of confidence, Professor. Appreciate it.
Minus 6 times negative 3 plus 4, right? Now, what some of you did was you said negative 3 times negative 3 is 9, and then square that. That's not what you do. You remember the order of operations. You got to do the exponent first and then multiplication. So you got to say negative 3. Well, I should have used a different number. Let me use a different number. Let me use negative
No,
4.
please show us where we went wrong.
I'm about to. Yeah.
By all means.
All right, use a different number. All right, so what some of you did was you said negative 3 times negative 4 is 12, and then you square the 12 and say that's 144. It's not true. That's not 144. You got to do the exponents first.
One of the few I got right.
What's negative 4 squared?
Positive 16.
16. So you got to do this first. Now, what's 16 times a negative 3?
Negative 48.
All right, so negative 48. What's a negative 4 times a negative 6?
Positive 24.
And then plus 4. And so what's negative 48 plus 24?
Negative 24.
And what's negative 24 plus 4?
Negative 20.
All right, so that'll be your answer, negative 20. Okay? All right, now, this is going to be number 56 on page 453. All right, so here's 56. So you're given this. You're given that f of x is this. Now remember, the one in your test was a polynomial. The one in this section is a rational function. So it's a polynomial divided by polynomial. So make sure you understand that this right here, x minus 2 divided by negative 5 plus x, that's a rational function. So a polynomial divided by a polynomial. What they want you to do, though, there are 3 things they want you to do. They want you to find f of negative 5. So it's the same way you did the test. So how do you find f of negative 5?
You plug in
Plug it
negative
in.
5 wherever there's an X.
Right. So they're going to say negative 5 minus 2
Negative
divided by negative 5
plus
plus a
negative.
negative 5, right?
So
Y'all
you
agree?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the numerator?
Negative 7.
What's the denominator?
Negative 10.
Don't leave it as negative 7 or negative 10
Yeah,
because you're
because-
supposed to know that a negative divided by negative is a
Positive.
Positive.
Positive 7 tenths.
7/10. That's the answer. All right, find f of 0. How do you find f of 0?
Plug in.
Plug in.
Where we see the variable x, you plug in 0. So I get 0 minus 2 divided by negative 5 plus what?
0.
0. What's the numerator?
Negative 2.
2.
What's the denominator?
Negative 5.
What does that equal?
2 fifths.
2/5. Then they want you to find f of 5. F of 5. So how do you find f of 5?
Plug in
Where we see
5.
the variable x, what do you plug in?
5.
5. So that's 5 minus 2 divided by negative 5 plus what?
5.
5. Y'all agree?
Yes, sir.
What's the numerator?
3.
What's the denominator?
0.
0. What is 3 divided by 0? Nope.
3.
No,
Oh,
that's undefined.
undefined.
Undefined. 0 divided by 3. Some of you said 0. 0 divided by 3. 0 divided by 3 is what? 0. 3 divided by 0 is undefined. You can't divide by 0. Some of you said 1. Well, you know it can be 1 because anything divided by itself is what? 1.
So that's one of them ones where when you punch it into your calculator, hopefully the calculator will tell you undefined.
Well, it doesn't say undefined. Put in your calculator, what does it give you? It gives you an error.
Yeah.
It'll say error or something like that. Domain error.
Divide by 0 error or something like that.
Put error on it.
Okay, so that takes care of this section. Now I'm hoping. All right. So now let's look at this. All right. So that was number 8. I said.
Yeah.
All right, number 8. Okay. So this is going to be. Let's say this is number 10. Number 10. All right. This is number 10. You have x squared plus x divided by 8 times 16 of x plus 1.
Okay.
Now, what some students do is they, you see how when we did number 8, the only thing you could have factored was that first numerator,
Mhm.
and I just went ahead and just rewrote everything else over. I just kind of went to the next line and I just factored the numerator, wrote everything else over. What you may want to do is notice that the only thing you can factor is what in this case?
8 to 16.
No, factor.
Oh,
The
X squared plus x. So you may want to just go here, just dealing with this right here, and just right above it, do the factoring. What's that going to be? X times, come on guys, x times what? X plus 1, right? So instead of rewriting the whole thing over here, you can just do that, like this. Now it gets a little bit messy though when you do that. Now let's reduce. What's the first factor that you see? X. Is there an x occurring as a factor anywhere down there?
yeah, no.
No.
No. What's the next factor you see?
X plus 1.
Do you see an x plus 1 occurs as a factor anywhere in the denominators?
Yes.
I can reduce those. What's the next factor you see? Will 16 reduce in any factor that's in the denominator?
Yes.
The same. So 8 to 8 is 1, 8 to 16 is
2.
2. So therefore, I'm going to get, what's going to be the numerator?
1.
Nope,
Oh,
2x.
X,
What's the denominator?
1,
Okay, but don't leave it like that because you know that the numerator divided by 1 is
2x.
the numerator. All right, so that's number 10. All right, number 12. It's not difficult. You got to know how to factor. All right, number 12, my first rational expression looks like this. M minus n squared. My denominator is m plus n times the numerator is m. The denominator is m squared plus m n. Now this is where I'm actually going to write in that next step right here. I'm going to go ahead and write it in. Now, you see that numerator, the first numerator, m minus n squared?
Right.
It's already factored. There's nothing to do there. So it really, if you want to rewrite it, it's going to be m minus n times what?
M minus n.
M minus n. So write it like that. Just say m minus n times m minus n. That's what that is. You understand that's what m squared, m minus n squared means, right? Okay. The denominator, can I factor it?
Is it, what is that?
M plus n?
no.
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 The numerator, that's a monomial, just rewrite it. The denominator, how can I factor that?
M
Times
m plus n.
m plus n. Okay. All right.
Alright, you can.
Okay. Okay. Listen carefully to this. It's kind of dark right here. So
Yeah,
So this should have been,
that one like that, that doesn't look like that does anything.
no, well, you're right. Well, the m's would be the only thing.
Oh, okay.
So this should have been right here. M squared minus mn. So that would be minus right here, right? Okay. Okay.
Alright,
All right. Now let's go to the factors. What's the first factor that you see in the numerator?
M plus M.
Nope.
M minus
M minus n.
M.
Is there an m minus n occurring as a factor in the denominator?
Yes.
Yes. So cross that out. One's in their places. What the factor of one just left. What's the next factor that you see?
And M.
M minus n.
But you were.
Is there an m minus n in the denominator?
Not anymore.
No. The next factor you see is
M.
m. Is there an m occurring as a factor in the denominator?
At the
Yes.
bottom.
This one right here, right? Not this one, because that's not a factor. What's your factor here?
M plus N.
M plus n. This is the m that's a factor.
So 1 and 1.
Okay. Now, that's all I can do. So now, what's 1 times m minus n times 1?
M minus
M
M
minus M.
over M plus N.
M plus n. Because m plus n times 1 is m plus n. Can I cancel all these m's?
No.
No, those are not factors.
Right off of that.
All right, so that's number 12.
See, this is when you know math is just not fun. When they have more letters than there are numbers.
Yeah.
See,
It's
math is supposed to have
gone from
numbers.
being math to spelling.
This is when you know you fit, like, no.
14. All right, 14 is a squared minus 4a plus 4 divided by a squared minus 4 times a plus 3 divided by a minus 2.
That's 4? That's 4, A plus 4, or what is it?
What now? A squared minus 4a plus 4. Yes.
You got to do some factoring.
All right. So the numerator, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let me just go ahead and rewrite it here. What's going to be the numerator? How are you going to factor this?
Two binomials.
Yeah, the two binomials, and then you're gonna add
A.
A in both of them.
And both of them are going to be,
Same, so it's gonna be a negative 4, so I guess it'll have to be above negative.
all right, a minus 2, right? What's the denominator?
A's,
Come on, y'all.
A minus,
that's that.
Difference of
A-
2 squares.
A minus 2 times A plus 2.
2.
Okay, the numerator here I can't do anything with. The denominator here I can't do anything with. So the only things I could factor were the numerator and the denominator, that first rational expression.
Right. So you got an A minus 2.
Okay, so I can start going through the factors. How many factors in the numerators altogether? 3. First one's a minus 2. Is there an a minus 2 in the denominator? Yes, in fact, there's 2 of them. It doesn't matter which one I cross out. It does not matter. Okay?
Then you got
What's the next factor?
A minus 2. which
There's
is
another one, right?
so they go away to-
The next factor is a plus 3. Is there an a plus 3 in the denominator?
no,
So what's the answer?
A plus.
A plus 3 over A plus 2.
Yeah, and that's it. That's all you're doing. So we're going to stop here and we're going to do more of this next class period.